My brother announced he and my parents were moving into my lake house, so I prepared a welcome they never expected. Chloe's attorney, Melissa Grant, didn't panic when I showed her the forged documents. She smiled. Not because the situation was funny, because she had seen people like Ryan before. They're overconfident, she said, carefully placing the paperwork on her desk. People who believe family means they'll never face consequences usually make very sloppy mistakes. I just want to protect my house. And you will, she looked me straight in the eyes. But first we're going to let them believe their plan is working. That wasn't what I expected. You don't want me to confront them? Melissa shook her head. Not yet. She explained that every text message, email, voicemail, and document could become evidence. If Ryan thought I knew everything, he'd become careful. If he believed I was still confused, he'd keep making mistakes. For the first time since receiving the county email, I felt like I had some control. The next morning, Ryan called. I let it ring twice before answering. So, he said casually, have you thought about the lake house? I'm thinking. I knew you would. He sounded almost cheerful. It makes sense for everyone. I guess. You'll see. I kept my answers short. Exactly as Melissa had instructed. Ryan loved hearing himself talk. People like him usually filled silence with information they shouldn't share. He didn't disappoint. You won't regret this, he said. I've already spoken with investors. Investors? What investors? Oh, he laughed nervously. Forget I said anything. Too late. After we hung up, I immediately wrote down everything he had said, including the exact time and date. Melissa smiled again when she read my notes. Excellent. Why? Because this stopped being about family, now it's about fraud for financial gain. Over the next 2 weeks, strange things kept happening. A cleaning company arrived at my lake house. They said they had been hired to prepare the property for vacation guests. I sent them away, then a photographer showed up. He said he was scheduled to take listing photos. I politely explained that the owner had never hired him. 2 days later, a furniture company delivered patio chairs addressed to Ryan. Every delivery created another paper trail, another witness, another piece of evidence. Melissa told me not to refuse business cards or invoices. Collect everything, she said. Every mistake they make helps us. I bought a large binder. Soon it was full. Delivery receipts, screenshots, emails, phone logs, photographs. Even security camera footage showing Ryan walking around my property while I was at work. Every time he visited, he looked more confident. He measured rooms, walked around the backyard, pointed toward the dock while talking on his phone. He acted less like a brother and more like a developer inspecting an investment. Then one evening, Linda knocked on my door. You need to hear this. She handed me her phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, she said, but Ryan was talking loudly outside the cafe. She had accidentally recorded part of the conversation. Ryan's voice was perfectly clear. Once we get Chloe's name off the paperwork, we'll turn it into a premium vacation rental. Summer bookings alone will pay for everything. Another voice asked, does she know? Ryan laughed. She'll complain for a while, but she's too soft to fight family. I stared at the screen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Melissa could. This recording, she said carefully, combined with the forged documents and the delivery records, paints a very interesting picture. She immediately added it to the evidence file. Then she made another suggestion. We're hiring a forensic handwriting expert. A week later, the expert delivered his report. The forged signature wasn't just suspicious, it was fake beyond any reasonable doubt. The pressure, the angles, the spacing, everything was different from my genuine signature. Melissa leaned back in her chair. Now we have scientific evidence. So what happens next? We wait. Wait, they're getting comfortable, and comfortable people become careless. She was right. Ryan became careless faster than either of us expected. One Friday afternoon, I received an email that wasn't meant for me. Someone had accidentally copied my address instead of another client's. Attached was a draft advertisement. Luxury lakeside retreat sleeps 10 coming soon. The photos weren't mine because they had never been taken. Instead, they used edited pictures from an old social media post I had shared years earlier. Even worse. The contact number belonged to Ryan. He was advertising my home before he even controlled it. Melissa nearly laughed. I've been practicing law for 18 years, she said. I've rarely seen someone build a case against himself this efficiently. She immediately sent preservation notices to everyone involved. The photographer, the marketing company, the booking platform, the county office. No one would be able to destroy evidence now. Meanwhile, my parents suddenly changed their strategy. No more anger, no more demands. Instead, they invited me to Sunday dinner. Against my better judgment, I went. Mom hugged me like nothing had happened. Dad smiled too much. Ryan barely looked at me. Halfway through dinner, Mom placed a folder on the table. "We've been thinking," she said softly. Dad nodded. "This agreement makes everything fair." I opened the folder. It was a family property sharing agreement. According to the document, I would remain the legal owner, but Ryan would become the permanent property manager with full authority to rent, renovate, and make financial decisions. In other words, they wanted me to sign away control while keeping all the legal responsibility. I slowly closed the folder. "No," Ryan finally spoke. "You didn't even read the whole thing." "I read enough." Dad's voice hardened. "You're tearing this family apart?" I stood up calmly. "No," I looked at each of them. The family was torn apart the moment someone forged my signature. The color drained from Ryan's face for just a second. He realized I knew. But he still had no idea how much evidence was already waiting for him, and neither did my parents. I left my parents' house without another word. Ryan didn't chase after me, neither did Mom or Dad. They thought I was bluffing. They believed guilt would eventually wear me down, just as it always had. What they didn't know was that Melissa had already filed for an emergency court order to block any future filings related to my lake house. At the same time, the county recorder's office had officially opened an investigation into the forged documents. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, not because the problem was over, because I finally knew I wasn't fighting it alone. A few days later, Melissa called. "Are you free tomorrow morning?" "Yes, I've arranged something." "What is it?" "A meeting." "With who?" "Your family." I frowned. "Why would they agree to that?" "They think we're negotiating." "And we're not." She smiled. "We're giving them one last opportunity to tell the truth." The meeting took place in a conference room at Melissa's law office. Ryan arrived wearing an expensive suit, looking as confident as ever. Mom carried a plate of homemade cookies as if this were a family gathering instead of a legal meeting. Dad barely acknowledged me. Ryan sat down first. "So," he said, smiling, "let's settle this like adults." Melissa calmly opened a thick binder. "I agree." Ryan's smile grew wider. "I knew Chloe would come around." Melissa ignored him. She slid the first document across the table. "This is the forged ownership paperwork submitted to the county." Ryan glanced at it. "So," then came the forensic handwriting report. His smile faded. Next came screenshots of his emails, delivery invoices, security camera photos showing him entering my property without permission. The recording Linda had captured outside the cafe. Melissa pressed play. Ryan's own voice filled the room. "Once we get Chloe's name off the paperwork," no one spoke. When the recording ended, the silence felt heavier than any argument. Mom looked at Ryan. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Ryan swallowed. It's being taken out of context." Melissa calmly placed another folder on the table. "This contains statements from the moving company, the photographer, the cleaning service, and the marketing agency." She looked directly at Ryan. "Every single one believed you already own the property?" Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Melissa continued. "We also have evidence that vacation rental advertisements were prepared before any legal ownership existed." Ryan's confidence disappeared completely. "This is ridiculous." "No," Melissa replied. "This is fraud." The room fell silent again. Finally, she spoke the words Ryan never expected to hear. "If this proceeds to court, we are fully prepared to pursue civil damages and cooperate with any criminal investigation regarding forged legal documents." Mom burst into tears. Dad covered his face with his hands. Ryan stared at the table. For the first time in his life, no one rushed to save him. A week later, Ryan's attorney contacted Melissa. They wanted to settle. The agreement was simple. Ryan admitted he had no legal claim to my lake house. He agreed to withdraw every filing connected to my property. He signed a permanent statement promising never to represent himself as the owner again. He paid my legal fees. He also agreed to stay off my property unless personally invited. Melissa looked at me. You don't have to accept. I thought about everything. The lies, the pressure, the tears, the betrayal. Then I nodded. I'll accept. Not because Ryan deserved kindness, because I deserved peace. The biggest surprise came 2 months later. My parents showed up at my front door. Alone, no moving truck, no boxes, no demands. Mom looked older than I remembered. Dad seemed exhausted. We owe you an apology, Mom whispered. I didn't answer immediately. Dad took a deep breath. We believed Ryan because it was easier than believing we'd raised someone capable of doing this. I know, we were wrong. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We don't expect forgiveness. I appreciated the honesty. I forgive you, I said quietly, but forgiveness isn't the same as trust. Neither of them argued. They understood. Some things once broken never return to what they were. Before leaving, Dad handed me a small envelope. Inside was the spare key to my lake house, the one I'd given them years earlier for emergencies. We don't want this anymore, he said. It belongs to you. I closed the envelope and nodded. Thank you. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was an honest one. 6 months later, life was peaceful again. Every morning, I sat on my dock with a cup of coffee, watching the sunlight dance across the lake. No unexpected visitors, no arguments, no anxiety every time my phone rang, just silence. The kind of silence I'd worked so hard to protect. One afternoon, Linda walked over carrying 2 iced coffees. You know, she laughed, your story has become neighborhood legend. I smiled. I'd rather be known for my garden, she laughed. People still can't believe someone tried to steal your house. They didn't steal it. They almost did. I looked across the calm water. They underestimated one thing. What's that? They thought being family meant I wouldn't defend myself. Linda nodded. They picked the wrong sister. I smiled for the first time in a long while. No, I watched the gentle waves reach the shore. They picked the right one. Because protecting your peace isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. And loving your family should never require handing them the keys to everything you've earned. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's refusing to let someone else's entitlement become your future. My lake house was still mine, my peace was still mine, and this time, no one would ever mistake my kindness for permission again.